Thanks for joining. So we have a good panelists today here, and we'll be discussing some of the leadership challenges that we have faced with our experience, and we have a few specific questions we want to discuss. And then, yeah, if you have any questions or something, we're open to have that conversations as well. So to get started, so let me introduce myself. Well, this is Pranay Chandur, and I'm an associate director, Walmart e-commerce, and I currently focus on some of the divisions like marketplace and fulfillment services at Walmart. And I was able to build the data science stack from scratch, and now I was able to support the multi-billion-dollar business line. So happy to be here, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amir Emadzadeh. I'm a director of software engineering at Genentech, Roche, and I oversee a team of software developers, full stack developers, data scientists, and we create software products for our internal stakeholders.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Benjamin Harvey. I am the founder and CEO of AI Squared. Our company really just focuses on accelerating and simplifying how you can integrate generative AI, predictive AI into currently existing applications. After my PhD in computer science, I went to Harvard, MIT, postgraduate work, all the way through to Databricks, worked 2 years there, and finally wrapped up a career at the National Security Agency for about 10 years and started AI Squared. So really excited to be here. Thank you.
My name is Rick Ballmann, Vice President, Head Engineer, American Express, Global Services Technology. I've been with American Express about 9 years. I think this is my 4th year at this event. So started way back when it was just a couple of conference rooms in a tower in New York, and now it's like can't even get coffee without 10,000 people wandering around. So it's definitely getting exciting, but I'm glad to be here. Spent a little bit of time at Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, couple startups, and now I'm mainly responsible for all the technologies that employs the global servicing function at American Express, the chatbots and all of that sort of AI stuff. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's get started with the first one. We have people, CEO starting a company, and then we have different leaders here. So let's start off with something, it's more of a cross collaboration. So can you share some of the challenges that you have encountered when coordinating between data science, engineering, and IT teams during machine learning models, making it to production, and how did you manage this overall, and what were some of the challenges, and what did you learn from you guys? Like, how did you execute that part? Maybe we can start with Amir.
Sure. So in pharmaceutical companies, what happens is technology sometimes becomes like a competition against the current processes and models, business models. So you would face, as soon as you get to deploy any technology-based product, you get to face that issue. For example, in my case, I've been trying to use data science and AI for a whole lot of different use cases, but I have to be really cautious about who is my stakeholder and how I am gonna use this product to improve the current processes, and be able to be able to do that, I have to take allies, basically. To be more specific, I'll just give you an example of one of the projects I've worked on. It's called feasibility analysis, and what the problem is basically picking clinical trial sites and investigators, and also developing like patient enrollment models to be able to forecasting for clinical operations. So when the clinical trial protocol is ready, clinical operations groups have to go and pick the right sites and investigators, and also develop some insight into how long it takes to recruit the targeted number of patients. So historically, what happens is they already have developed relationships with different sites and investigators, so they go usually back to the same people, same teams. It's basically based on their gut feeling. Now, there's a lot of data sources out there available. Now there's a lot of AI, data science-based models that you can use to improve this whole process, be more accurate, and be able to do the job more efficiently and in a better way, because all these data sources are available, and you can tap into these historical data that we have gathered through time. The challenge here is you have to show your stakeholder, which is in this case the study team in clinical operations, how this is gonna make their lives easier. If you become their competitor, no matter how good of a model you develop, nobody is going to look at it, nobody is going to adopt it, and actually, in fact, you wouldn't have much chance of enforcing it onto their current processes either. So that's something you have to be always cautious about when you bring new technologies into like these old environments where they already have established processes for everything. Now, when it comes to technology, using like technology platforms, and you have to now deal with the IT team, for that, again, what happens is there's going to be a lot of processes, established processes and procedures when you want to use enterprise IT for any technology platform you want to use. And a lot of times, at least in pharma, it's not very transparent. Like there's always a lot of, maybe you have faced similar situations, like there's a lot of like territorial political arguments that have, are around what you want to do. So again, my approach has been like taking allies and also showing by enabling these technology-based products how our patients are gonna see the benefit of what we do, and also internally how we can remove a whole lot of burden from the current teams who are involved in these processes.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I mean, making allies, yeah, that'll definitely, that stood out in the entire thing that you mentioned to me at least. So Rick and Benjamin, do you guys want to add something to it?
No, I think that was pretty well said.
Okay, awesome. So a couple of things to add on top of what Amir mentioned, right? At least in my experience, a leader in the data science, especially productionizing some of your products within the well-knit integrated ecosystem, like companies like Walmart, right? So a few things that I want to call out is first, like I always start with writing a one-pager, if possible, about like what you're doing and what you want to do in the beginning of the process. So with the one-pager, what happens is that will help me better structure my ideas, and I also want to add the integration component where, like, if you were to productionize it, how we can actually fit into the ecosystem, what would be the some of the prerequisites, and what would be the challenges. So once the one-pager is done, I'll try to think about like who would be the potential collaborators in this. Most of the times it could be leaders from software engineering, and like in my experience as I work in the supply chain space, you would be also dealing with the warehouse management systems. So sharing this information early on in the early stage of the process with the cross-functional partners would always benefit. And once you engage in these conversations, you will be able to understand whether you were able to get the buy-in from or not based on the questions they ask. So, for example, if the questions are around, what is a stack, and how do you want us to be with how do you want us to productionize? So, if these are the questions, then it's easy and fair for us to understand that we got the buy-in. Otherwise, what we can do is, of course, you're gonna get a buy-in from business even before you start a product, right? So using that buy-in from business, and also trying to explain the value you're providing and how it can better improve the value of their offerings with this add-on, always help me to be, again, like you mentioned, Amir, like be an ally for you guys, and help you with the better integration in the ecosystem, and also for you to roll out within the timelines that you have. Perfect. So moving on to the next one. Effective communication is really important, especially in the machine learning space, whether it could be dealing with a non-technical audience or some of your cross-functional partners. So the question is, how do you translate complex technical aspects into a language that decision makers and the end users can understand? So maybe Rick, if you can help address this question, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the trick. I think with the explosion of Gen AI and all executives around the world stumbling onto websites that paint pictures for them, and coming to work and saying, I need Gen AI, I need it now, sort of caused a little bit of chaos. I'd say that focusing primarily on the outcomes tends to be the common language between a machine learning engineer and an executive. So, we at American Express trying to stay out of the chaos of trying to get something out into production as quickly as possible, regardless of what it does or how it works. We try to focus on, well, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the outcome? And from there, decide on what implementation will best serve that outcome. So, for us, communication's a struggle. Everything's moving 1,000 miles an hour. Nobody wants to be second place right now, but it really is important to focus on what it is you're trying to do and what it is you want the customer to experience, and then go from there. So that's the approach we're trying to take.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And so always. What I have always seen is that when it comes to finance and banking, so the processes are a little more rigorous compared to some of the other industries like e-commerce, for example. So how do you, and you want to roll out the product sometimes for you bringing value to the customer. So I want to understand, in that case, how you handle that.
No, banking is definitely one of the super regulated spaces. And, a lot of people will think that prevents or prohibits innovation. I think it's just a matter of making sure that you have the right processes. American Express, and I'm sure most of the group up here, we've been doing AI for a while. A lot of these companies have been doing AI for a while. We have the governance in process, 2 lines, model reviews every month, all of that's in place. And making sure that we apply what we've learned up till now to the new emerging generative AI space. When every tendency is to try and go fast because of how hot everything is going, to not sacrifice what you've learned and some of your core practices, which are safety for the customer, first and paramount, privacy, all of that, making sure all of that is still in place. While it may make you feel like you're going slower, it actually tends to speed you up in the long run. So just that's our primary focus as we look toward AI in our future as well. So
yeah, thanks for that, Rick. Anything that you want to add to that? That's fine.
No, I think that was very, very well said.
Perfect. Thank you. So moving on to the next one. With the rapid pace of AI technology development, and as you guys have seen with some of the areas like Gen AI and the ChatGPT, how do you maintain and adapt to it, and with the flexible process that can accommodate new methods or tools without disrupting the existing foundation and the ongoing work? So maybe Benjamin, if you can address that.
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that a lot of these organizations, when you think of the goals that they're trying to and the objectives that they're trying to achieve inside of these organizations with predictive AI and generative AI, it really boils down to a couple of things. One being, a lot of AI projects are taking a long time in organizations. One of our biggest customers is a Fortune 100 financial services organization. And, they were 8.5 months into a journey of integrating a predictive model inside of a CRM tool. So when you think about speed to market, a lot of organizations are clamoring and really trying to figure out how do they, start an AI project, take it out of the experimental domain, and then productionize it across the organization. But at the same time, you're trying to cut costs, right? You're looking at what are the duplicate processes within the organization when it comes to implementing technology that we can, cut some of the costs associated with how we're developing AI in our end-to-end machine learning life cycles, as well as, ultimately, these organizations are trying to increase AI adoption, right? It's really, when you think about not on the autonomous AI side of the house where, it's a organization like Capital One who is using autonomous AI to stop a transaction before it actually happens, but when there's a human in the loop, right? So this is, there's an end user or a business user inside of the organization that needs to consume the data in order to make a data-driven decision. So when you think about some of those areas or goals and objectives, the overall, a lot of these organizations, especially our customers, what we're seeing is that they're looking for ways to test, evaluate, validate, and verify the value that these models are having inside of currently existing workflows and applications, right? So it's not the traditional, hey, let's take it out to a sandbox environment, let's train a world-class model, and then let's bring it into a live production environment and do A/B testing, and then scale it and productionize it. They're trying to figure out inside of these operational workflows, how do we deliver these AI and machine learning capabilities and then evaluate the performance, from a human in a loop perspective, as these individuals are going out their day-to-day objectives in their workflows, right? About a year ago, right, it was all about predictive AI, deep learning, the traditional machine learning algorithms. But now it's really, from a generative AI perspective, how do you start to, because if you think about OpenAI and how they use reinforcement learning, human feedback to actually train the instruct models that they use right now. So they spent years trying to figure out how do we get the human feedback that's going to allow us to have a world-class model before we deploy ChatGPT application. So a lot of the organizations that we're seeing now are trying to figure out from a generative AI perspective is really two things. Number one, how do you start to get that human feedback inside of the workflows of an organization that can allow you to really train and tune a world-class LLM, right? Because what we're seeing in organizations is in the initial creation of an LLM using internal data, when they deploy it, it's not as good as you would like it to be until you get that feedback and you start tuning. But secondly, these organizations are also interested in, how do you break out of the chat application, right? So all language models as we know them right now are confined to a chat application. So how do you start to break out of the chat application? Microsoft and Copilot has done a really good job of that. But break out of the chat application and start to gather that feedback necessary to really auto-tune these models inside of those organizational workflows without disruption. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of our customers.
Fair. Yeah, that makes sense. Completely sense. So, okay. You speaking of the Gen AI, right? Stepping into that aspect. I want to understand, with the Gen AI, how is a company, thinking about the Gen AI as an application? And I want to understand, I'm sure some of the mature organizations does already have some of the applications within that space, but with this whole new buzz around Gen AI with the Chat GPT coming up for every audience out there, it would be great if you could share how's your approach and how is it included as part of your vision from the AI standpoint, and where are you guys in the process if it's not proprietary?
Really, really great question. So, one of our Fortune 500 cybersecurity companies, we worked to deploy a large language model inside of their organization, right? They were, months into a study to build a model that, incorporated things like, malicious hashes, IPs, domains, all the way through threat intelligence, right? The challenge was when they deployed the model, it wasn't as accurate as they needed to be to really serve this cybersecurity operations center. And what they realized, from the research is really that the models that are currently deployed, think about GPT-3, 3.54, these algorithms have had a huge amount, years that have been put into the human feedback piece. So now organizations are saying, all right, And you think about the statistics, right? 70% of organizations that are deploying large language models are failing right now. So what organizations are trying to do is figure out, okay, when I deploy and train this model in the organization, and then when I come back and it's not as accurate as I need it to be, what do I do then, right? So one of the things that we did for this Fortune 500 cybersecurity organization that wanted to integrate a model into their SOC, we really helped them and support that feedback loop, right? Where you think about things like, all right, if the large language model is wrong, how do you provide a additional context that can help you understand why it was wrong? But also if it was wrong, can you submit a correct answer for the large language model and using that information to tune the model and redeploy it? So these are, challenges when you think of, it's not just, training the model and building a world-class model. It's after you train and you deploy and it's not as good as you want it to be, how do you, instrument the application with the correct feedback to really be able to tune and get it redeployed?
Yep. Definitely, completely agreed on that part. So a couple of points to add from my side about like how our organization is actually adopting to it. So in terms of training models on the content of our organization at Walmart, we are well versed, but with this whole buzz around Gen AI, like every audience out there, even internally from the organization standpoint, we have a lot of interest that we have been receiving. So the way we are thinking about is basically, to have like a centralized a sandbox where you can actually test your applications, and then we have different embedded teams, utilizing that sandbox, generic sandbox, and then train the model with their curated content, and then take it from there. So it's very early in terms of stages, in terms of in terms of like how we can actually bring in value. So just like any machine learning project, so we expect not every project that we're going to take up would have a successful outcome. So that's how I think about it. Anything that you would like to add on to that?
No, I think Ben made a good point. I think that the commercialization of these large language models it's probably its biggest feature, and it's probably its biggest risk. It's like anybody in the world overnight now has access to what OpenAI took years to train. So on one hand, that's great for innovation. We can get 50 startups a week that come out of nowhere that can do this and that. But it's also, there was these companies, these individuals that it doesn't require any discipline to employ these models today. You just download the app or you connect to the API and off you go. So I think the businesses that put the most effort into understanding the discipline of machine learning, understanding how models are trained and how the feedback loop, and starting small with human in the loop type workflows, like those are the ones that are going to seem like they're going slow, but are going to be the ones that outlast the carnage that happens over the next probably 5 or 10 years, I'd say.
So a follow-up question on that, Rick. So let's say one of your team members came to you and he or she's very curious and interested in spinning up some application on top of Gen AI at your company. So how do you handle that?
I mean, it's difficult not to be tempted with all of this cool stuff that can happen. But I think and this happens to me a lot. For every one project that we're moving forward with at American Express, there's a graveyard of other projects that we've killed along the way, just as a part of the natural culling process of like that's not a great idea. So it's just a matter of, again, going back just where we started the panel, expectations, outcomes. I think AI, when done correctly, it's sort of invisible. You don't know it's there. It's like it's in recommendation, the restaurant recommendation app that you used this morning that you didn't even know AI predicted for you. It's not about disrupting everyone's lives. It's about seamlessly integrating into everyone's lives. And I think if you start from there and you think about everything from that, it sort of focuses your compass a little bit, and then all the other things that are noise kind of fall out. But But yeah, that's sort of how I'd probably approach that. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And what stood out to me based on what you said is like it's very well integrated in our lives right now. Like most of the times you don't even realize how it's actually helping you and making a better lifestyle for you as well. So yeah, that's a very good call out.